Okay, well this is part 2 of the Bookends German church winter diorama that I'm building. In this part, it's 20 minutes long. I usually try to keep them to 15, but in this part I'll show you the basic construction of the church through to getting the corbels on the engaged bricks and things like that. The next part, part 3, actually is putting the door, making the doors, doing the figures, finishing the church off. But again, for the people that want to see how things are done, I've made 5 parts worth of how things are being done. If you just want to see the finished thing, jump through to the 5th video and it finishes off and you can see it that way. When we left, I had finished the streets off and separated the 2 bookends. So I've started by rather than eyeball, it's a little bit eyeballing, but it's not completely eyeballing. I went and enlarged one of the photographs till it was the doorway was the right size for the 1/35th scale figure that I'd made, that I had basically glued together, because that's the only constant. So the doorway has to fit the person. We know what size the person is, so I've blown it up till the picture fitted, printed off a few copies, which gives me the size for what the doorways and things needed to be. And so then I was able to start the end wall and start the side walls. So they've been cut out, they've been shaped, they got cut so that the join runs up the middle of them, and then a little bit of fiddling with the knife back and forth to get them to sit properly in the space that's available to them. Then it was a matter of getting the plan and cutting out the relative holes, leaving space at the bottom for where it disappears underneath the road, and then cutting out literally cutting the holes out for the doorway and for the window. Now I've done this in 2 parts when I drew it, because the doorway has a bit that's missing, but then it also has the brickwork that's engaged and goes in on an angle. Same with the window. The window has an actual hole where the window sills and the panes of glass are, but it has a beveled engaged sort of brickwork thing. So here I am cutting out the doorway one, and that's just putting an angle on it. Again, that's eyeballing. So I tried to get from the picture, I got where the outline was, and then I've just freehanded cut the bevel in the shape that looked the most accurate. The window's a bit tricky because it had the sideways ones, and then there's a extra one for the window sill at the bottom, so it was on an angle. And just doing it until, just cutting little bits until it looked right. Trying to get the roof figured out. The shape of the roof is quite compound because it goes up on an angle and then it changes angles halfway up. I'm really sorry that I didn't realise that the shot didn't show it. I abandoned that, to have a bit more of a think about, and then got my lamp posts from a train set that I had, but the HO scale is not the right scale. I couldn't find any online that were the right size, so I got an aerial from a radio and pulled it to pieces and used one section that was the right length to extend the height of the lampshade. Then I went back to figuring out the roof. So I measured out the width of the roof. Again, we know what the constant widths are because of the building, but it goes up on an angle flat along the bit that goes above the doorway, but then it compounds, comes back on an angle. It's not a straight up and down gable. It's sort of like a hip roof, but only as far as the shape of the building. So a little bit barny looking. I think it might be German architecture for the period, but once I got the basic shape done, I sticky taped it together to get the idea, and then trying to get it to mount onto the church without slipping down, I decided that I needed to put some supports in it. So I'm busily cutting out some supports out of foam to glue along the bottom that'll sit it so that it sits flush and hangs over so that it's got eaves and hangs past the wall but doesn't slip slide around. So that was cutting them out and then I had to give them a bit of shaping because of the angles of the roof and the angle that the roof sits on, so that, and once all that was done, I super glued them to the roof so that I could then just place the roof on the wall and it would stay in place. At this point in time, I had some PVC tiles on order, so I wanted the shape of the roof, but I didn't want to glue everything because I had to recut it then when the plastic one turned up. So I used just safe release tape to fix everything basically in place and get it ready to go. Once I had the shape of the roof, I then was able to mark where it came to the back of the bookends and chop it off, and then with the assistance of my daughter, I cut out some foam board to fill in at the back above the bookends, to fill in the back of it so you don't see the in through the back of the model. It was again shaping the edges, trial and error, marking it, cutting it with a bit of the sand knife, taking a bit out, making sure that it looked right. There was a lot of filling that got done on this model from the edges of the roadway where the foam board was and the back of this. I spent quite a few moments with filler before the job was done to get it all straight and nice. You noticed in a couple of seconds ago that I was taping up the bottoms of the bookends. I found that they were wobbly a bit, so I just put some extra tape on it to keep it well and truly fixed in place for when I was mounting things. I did still have problems with the roof when I finally came to cut down it, but you'll see that in the next video that I made a wrong cut and required to stick a piece in. Thankfully the snow hid it. You can see it on the model if you're looking for it, but it's not immediately obvious because of the snow when it finally went on. So marking the hole to where the roof needs to cut to separate with the buildings. The two pieces of foam that I glued inside are to support cardboard when I finally put it in, but I didn't put the cardboard in because the door literally has to be glued on and the window has to be glued on from behind, and I can't do that until I've painted the building. I don't want to be mucking around with trying to mask up the little bit of perspex that I've got and to repaint a door. So I've left what will be the inside of the bookends without covering it by the end of this video. And you can see I'm just sticky taping everything into place, masking taping it all in to make sure that it's the right. Next was cutting out the it's skirting on the outside at the bottom of the building. This was made out of two pieces. There was a piece of foam that I beveled, and there was a piece of cardboard behind it because the skirting bit of the building is actually it's got a detail in it. So not a difficult thing to do in terms of construction, but making the angles, and especially the angles at the join, was tricky, and going down that side wall that I'm just doing now, it's straight and then it's down, so it was just, the construction was easy, but trying to get the angles right so everything fitted in was a little bit tricky. And then after all of that was done, I also went through and used some filler to fill up the gaps with it all and keep it looking nice. I don't know whether I videoed that bit or whether I did it without. So there's a couple of shots of where I'm up to now. Once that was done, with more checking out of the reference material, I realised that there's a window in the end that I hadn't noticed before, and this is making the engaged brickwork on the corner. I again got the picture that I had enlarged because everything is the right size from that, and I traced a copy of this and then flipped it over and traced the alternate so that it made the corner, the bricks all lined up with their long side and their short side. Then it was just cutting it out of a bit of cardboard. Because of the amount that it's relieved and the scale that it's in, one sheet of cardboard was enough to give the indication of the bricks sticking out and the right sort of a distance. Then I went through with a pen with no ink and pushed the the mortar lines in on the brickwork, folded it and super glued it to the corner of the building, having cut the angle at the top where the roof goes. And so there you go, you've got engaged brickwork ready to get painted down the track. Then I checked and there was the windows at the top. I really wish I'd noticed them. You'd think I would have, but you really wish I'd noticed them before I had finished the construction of the building, because it would have been a little bit easier to cut it out. There's 4 little windows that have a cross member between them that makes a cross, probably because it's the church. And so I had to very carefully cut right through the foam with my knife, leaving the little cross piece to be displayed. This window has shutters, but only on the bottom 2 windows. The shutters I just made out of cardboard. I cut the rectangular shape of the shutter, and then again with the pen that didn't have a lot of ink in it, I pressed in the individual blades of the shutters and the edge of it all. The next thing was making the outside frame for the windows. It's a fairly simple square with the 4 little holes cut out of it again. So it has an outside frame, then an inside cross constructed timber sill. I suppose it's timber on the building, but the profile of the whole window is actually pressed out, stands out on the outside, and then the shutters are fixed on the outside of that. So most of the construction, detail sort of construction in this model, ended up being pieces of cardboard or very thin balsa type wood. And it's I like working with cardboard. It's a nice material. It has its limitations. It couldn't be the building's walls unless I'd used really thick stuff. So, which is why I went with the foam board, because it was solider. But the cardboard in this particular instance was a great way to add the details in. So there's no 3D printing, mostly because I haven't got one, but really would like one. This is the basic sort of model making, scratch building way of doing things. So anybody that's out there that doesn't have the model making equipment other than a knife and cutting mat and cardboard, you can still do these things. So after I'd finished it all, cut it all out, there was a bit of super glue on it, glue it to the building, and then glue the shutters on. And that's where we'll finish for today. So thanks for watching this one. I realised in the middle of recording this that I hadn't sped up some of the video, so it's not as long as I thought it was going to be. In the next thing I do the doors and the window, and the plastic arrived for the roof, so I was able to do that. I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.